Welcome back to Ambivalent Offenders. This is Jamie.
And this is Aaron.
And we're going to be launching into our Dueling Villains, the second part, our second quote-unquote villain. Again, we use that term pretty loosely in this series. A person who has been at some point villainized. I think Aaron Burr might qualify for a villain for a lot of people. Well, yeah. How does the bastard orphan? No,
that's Alexander Hamilton.
We're just going to sneak the whole. I know. We're just going to do the whole Hamilton.
Surprise. We got you guys to click on it, and now it's just going to be us, our reinterpretation of Hamilton. Although, to be fair, Hamilton is going to come up a decent amount in this episode and even more next episode. Because, spoiler, your girl can't shorten her things, so Aaron Burr can get 2 episodes, but I felt like that was the only thing to do in order to properly cover his life. He's just got a lot of shit.
Plus, you have to talk about A-L-E-X-N-D-E-R. We are
meant to be.
I can't let you know. Okay, I'm not done.
I'm sure people who are here for the American Revolution, you won't get too much war references and stuff. This week, you get some stuff, but then the election of 1800 and the Burr-Hamilton duel, it's going to take a lot. So I decided not to cram it all in. So you're welcome.
Well, that means our final judgment between our dueling villains, John Brown and Aaron Burr, will have to wait until our part 2. So that makes sense. So the part 2, because we're going to have that
judgment
dueling villains, and hopefully we can get Matt on here for his judgment as well. And then if you are checking the Instagram, which always is, again, our kind of most up-to-date place to see, we've post out there a question for you guys. Our next dueling villains that we want to do is, I would say, a feminist take on it. Yeah, because I know on its surface it sounds very catty and very maybe very 90s, but looking between Princess Diana and Camilla. How did I forget her last
Camilla
name?
Parker
Queen
Bowles.
Camilla.
Yeah, Queen Camilla.
There we go.
I'm sure the Brits will come for us if we don't Queen Camilla. don't call her by her former name. Yeah, sorry.
It will be our next dueling series. We want to hear from you about whether we should jump right into a next dueling series, or do you want to hear some kind of one-off villains in between? So head to the Instagram, let us know. If you are on Patreon, remember we have right now a special going on. Also on Instagram, you can see how to get 2 months free. So you get to access all our content. And right now I have a poll going about who will be my next one-off villain. I won't even sprinkle a hint. I'll just say that if you're a paying member on Patreon, you can vote for that. And as I said, we have 2 months free. So you get the 2 months, and then it literally asks you, do you want to continue? So it doesn't just, when you sign up for something and you're like, oh, I'm going to cancel it. And then,
it get all my
10 years later.
It get all my subscription.
Right. 10 years later, you're like, oh, I've paid $800 for an app I've used like one time because it was funny. That is not like this. It will ask if you want to continue. You might as well join the party and the paying level. The Premier League, I also have some time off work being in the education field. And so I've got like a good 5 days with no kids, nothing. And so I was telling Aaron that we're going to have probably some fun minis that we'll be throwing out next week of Christmas. So on our Patreon, if you want to hear some fun little mini episodes, either tidbits from past villains that we didn't get to share, stories, or people who really can't fill a full episode, but we want to kind of give you a little background on, that will be on our Patreon. So if you go to Patreon, just search Ambivalent Offenders and you will find us there. I think that's all. Let's see. I talked about the Dueling Villains. I talked about the Patreon. Oh, last thing. As always, we love a good review or a rating.
Yes.
So if you want to review or rate, we always appreciate it. Helps other people find us and gives us motivation to get out of our beds like slugs. And
we were used to, this is not our real job, so this is all extra. Any motivation that you can give us, we love it.
We love you guys. Yeah. Just being able to do this and be able to talk about fun topics together. But yeah, it's nice when you know you're not just talking into the void.
Yeah.
Or even worse, talking to your sister.
Validation, baby. Everybody likes a little external validation. I don't think that's bad to say.
Praise us. Okay. Now we'll move on. So Aaron is going to be taking the reins today. Aaron taking on Aaron Burr.
Sir. Yes, the Hamilton references are going to be insane. I'm sorry. But am I? Not really. Between us, we've probably seen it at least 10 times, 8 times between us. I mean, we've seen
a lot. Yeah, not counting.
And listen to the soundtrack. Yeah, not counting the soundtrack or the Disney Plus viewing. So it's a lot.
Or karaoke.
Or Jamie has a mean karaoke skills. If you ever see her in person, ask her to do My Shot, or was it just Alexander Hamilton, the first one? The first.
Those are usually the two I do. How does it been? No,
they go into it. Yeah. Wow. As we said, Hamilton has put Aaron Burr back in the conversation, back in the narrative, if you will. I'm all for pop culture making history more accessible and exciting. I think most people who like history do enjoy that. But the ultimate question is, obviously, how close to the real Aaron Burr does Hamilton get? If anyone knows about Aaron Burr, it's typically about that fateful duel between Burr and Hamilton, which ends up with Hamilton dead. I don't think I have to say spoiler alert, but centuries old spoiler. We still always do spoiler alert, but if you're clicking this episode, you probably know. But there's a whole life up to that point. And Burr does live a whole life after the duel. So I really wanted to flesh out this very complicated man who was been called in turns a murderer, a traitor. He was, in fact, charged with high treason. We'll come back to that later because, oh boy, it's juicy.
Hey, and that also shares with John Brown, Treason Brothers
in treason. His enemies, including Alexander Hamilton, of course, compared him to Catiline, who's a Roman traitor who tried to take down the Roman Republic in the days of Cicero. And Catiline might be worthy of a episode one of these days. He's on my list. The book I read for this had this quote in the beginning that I think cuts right to the character of Aaron Burr. The book that I did read, I'll say I relied on the book, The Great American Rascal, The Turbulent Life of Aaron Burr by Noel Gerson.
Let's change our show name to History's Most Ambivalent Rascals.
I know, but it's just it's made for a good introduction to all things Aaron Burr, so I do recommend it.
I know, this rascal's not usually a term I think of, but beyond anybody who's like above like 7 years old.
I think he might be a little bit more than a rascal, but rascal also fits. The book, it has this quote that I think really cuts to the core of Aaron Burr. He's presented as this tragic hero doomed by his one fatal flaw. So here's the quote. So again, it's going to be kind of long, but I think it's worth sharing in its entirety to get yourself acquainted with the man that we're going to be spending 2 episodes on. So, quote, Aaron Burr was his own worst enemy, a man of genius and charm. He could have been one of the greatest of Americans in an age of giants. But the defects in his personality led him down a self-destructive path. And like the protagonist in an ancient Greek tragedy, he alone was responsible for his demise. Aaron Burr possessed every quality necessary for enduring success, except for one. He lacked a stability of character to match his gifts. End quote. Boom.
It does remind me of one of the last songs in Hamilton. You know, the world was wide enough. where Burr does the character Burr, that he'll be the villain in the history books, and he's like, I'm the one who paid for it.
I think it does, like, in terms of the play or the musical, I think it does a really good job of putting Burr on the screen that isn't a simple outright villain. You'll see that. I think he really does make a Burr that feels realistic.
And Burr's on more than Hamilton is. You could argue he's
technically kind of the star. He's the first person you see, right? And then I think that's what the book that I read and Hamilton as an artistic portrayal of a Burr. I think they mentioned, so if you read it and you're acquainted with the musical, you're like, yeah, this tracks.
Yeah, like the follows.
Yeah.
Their character portrayals aren't so far off or so deviated.
Yeah, not that I was expecting Hamilton to be incorrect, but I guess I was slightly surprised to see how much it did match the Burr that I was reading about. And honestly, I've spent a lot of time now with the Aaron Burr company, and I'm still not quite sure what to make of him. Like, his failings are more fascinating to me than others of our founding fathers, like Thomas Jefferson or John Adams. Oh, who cares about John Adams? Aaron Burr feels more, I almost want to say modern, relatable. I can't put a finger on it. I just know that I haven't really been able to stop thinking about him since I've started reading about.
Are you in love with Aaron Burr?
No, it's not a love. It's just the fascination where he's so talented, he's so smart, but then he makes these moves or he does something that you know why he's doing it, but you're like, oh, dude, this is not going to end well for you. That's kind of the summary of Burr's life. At every turn, instead of doing the moral thing, the thing probably each of us would do, he takes the other road. He takes the other route. And that's why I think he makes him more compelling than, like, Thomas Jefferson. We know his flaws. He's a little bit of a hypocrite. But there's something, again, about Burr that gets you coming back.
Well, and in the season of, I don't want to say ghostly season because of Ebenezer Scrooge and the ghosts of Christmas Past and Present, maybe Aaron Burr is a little bit of your ghost.
A little bit.
Yeah. You can come visit you. You can find this guy to be dressed in like in the Muppet Christmas Carol and like a creepy little
from what I know,
girl.
But from what I know about him, he had really good wine and he's very personable. So it'd probably be good company, really good company.
Yeah. Can I ask one other very crucial question?
Yeah.
Did he have the sweet, sweet singing voice like Leslie Odom Jr.?
I do not know. It did not say anything about him singing, but let's just say yes. Although very few can match up to Leslie, let's be honest. All right. Are you ready to dive into all things Aaron Burr?
As much as I can be.
Okay. Well, in terms of luck, Aaron Burr couldn't have had a better start in terms of parentage and background. He's born on the 6th of February, 1756, to a prominent family. So silver spoon in his mouth. His parents come from impressive lineage. His maternal grandfather, the father of his mother, Esther, was Jonathan Edwards, who we did mention.
We talked about last episode.
We mentioned in the John Brown episode. Yes, the
sinners in the hand of an angry God.
Yes, he is a theologian in early America who's the bane of plenty of American literature students. I'm sure you've had to read him. You've most certainly read the sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God.
Yeah.
Very fire and brimstone. There is that fire and brimstone preacher line from Hamilton that he sings for.
Yeah, I know.
So when you're talking about like
the beginning of not like a loving God who loves us.
No.
Angry God. You're bad. It's bad.
It's American Puritanism at its most angry and its scariest. That is not just his grandfather who was imbued with the preaching spirit. Aaron Burr's own father was a minister, presumably not as fire and brimstone. His father would actually become president of what would eventually become Princeton College. Not humble beginnings. Pretty upper class East Coast elite beginnings, but whatever security Aaron Burr had in his early life, it was shattered quickly. So by the age of 2, he'd be orphaned, and then his grandparents would die soon after too. So disease is taking the most important people in Aaron Burr's young life. But luckily for him, there's still family left. Aaron's taken in by his uncle, along with he does have an older sister, Sarah, who he'd be close to for the rest of his life. So he goes to live with an aunt and uncle who were unable to have children of their own. So they spoiled the children. There's the sense that, the kids could get away with doing whatever they wanted because the new set of parents, his aunt and uncle, didn't really want to punish them because they had been through a lot. There are hints of some unhappiness with Aaron despite this, that he, felt, he didn't quite love his aunt and uncle or didn't feel quite as much nurturing from them. But he's a smart and oftentimes mischievous child. You get the impression that he's too smart for his own good. We all know those children. We were those children.
I have those children.
Yeah. He's very advanced. My child likes to do math for fun. That would be Aaron Burr. That's Burr. He's so advanced and is intelligent that the school that he's going to essentially says, we can't do anything with him. That they don't have the capabilities to teach him because he's already smarter essentially than the teacher. So he has to be tutored.
They're like, have you seen our teachers? They are not as bright as your child.
I mean, it takes, I think, just like a couple months. And at that point, they're like, sorry, we don't have anything for him. His aunt and uncle have to hire him a tutor. And hire him a tutor who does end up being really important in his life. It's a good trade-off because this tutor does become an important person to him. And actually, I think eventually marries, I didn't write it down, but from what I can remember, the tutor ends up marrying his sister, Sarah. So becomes part of the family.
I was going to say, is he going to marry the sister? Obviously, that also shows, though, the privilege and wealth that they had, that they were able to hire a tutor.
Yeah, absolutely. You have some tragedy, but he's still upper class. Pretty upper class.
Yeah, John Brown ain't getting no tuition.
No. And then he tries to get into Princeton early. So his grandpa, Jonathan Edwards of Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God fame, his grandpa got into college at age 13. So Burr's trying to beat that record. So he applies to Princeton at the age of 11. Apparently, so he does a college visit. It sounds very modern, but apparently he's so small and undersized that the administration was basically like, nah, you're a baby. No babies allowed. So they say no because he's so...
No babies.
Because he's so small. Which 11, that's not surprising because most 11-year-olds are pretty small. I don't know a ton of 11-year-olds, but just off the top of my head, Burr would always be a little bit... He'd always be a little bit undersized. Eventually, he'd only be about 5'5" or so, and pretty slender built. But yeah, they're like, as soon as he goes out, they're like, no, you can't go to college. You gotta wait. He would eventually go at the age of 13. So he doesn't beat Grandpa's record, but he ties it. I mean, he was actually denied again, but then he pesters the president of the college, John Witherspoon, so bad that he basically has no choice but to let this kid attend college.
You're like just hitting puberty, kid. Chilled out.
He's still small, but they're like, okay, you're so annoying, we're going to let you in. We know how that goes. As a parent, you should know that too. That's usually how. The more annoying you are, the easier it is to win your argument.
Aaron Burr got into college. My son got a pair of soccer scissors.
Same thing. Soccer scissors.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
He threw a whole tantrum at Target with his dad. They're scissors that have soccer balls.
I thought it was like something to do with. I was trying to figure out that
shape, the same design as on a soccer ball. And his dad said no, and then he had a huge meltdown, which was obviously very much worth that $2 scissors. And so then I bought him. Scissors.
That's how Aaron Burr got into college. So kids, if you're applying to college, take note. At 19, Burr begins training in the law. He's one of those annoying people who don't even need to try at studying or anything. They're just naturally brilliant. And he already had a gift for charming the ladies, which we do see. We see that in Hamilton.
Right, at 13?
This is 19.
Okay.
I was like, that. He's in law school, or he's studying for the law. Studying law. Okay. He's grown up a little bit. He's charming the ladies, which you do see in Hamilton, both due to his looks and his intellect. So, like I said, he's a little bit on the shorter side. He's only about 5'3" at this time in college. But he has this beautiful dark hair, delicate, almost feminine features. To quote the book, men either were drawn to him or exhibited an aversion to him, whereas women of all ages found him irresistible. So he's a ladies' man, a little bit.
Even though he was like feminine looking?
That was in style. I mean, it looked beautiful. It's beautiful.
He's like the Timothee.
Oh, he's a Timothee Chalamet. Yeah, basically. Oh, yeah. If you look at some of the younger pictures of him, it is very Timothee.
Oh, really?
No, there we go. Okay.
I'm trying to understand the why the women are picking up the vibes. I mean, I'm not a big the Chalamet.
I'm not into Timothee, but other people are. Timothee, we've got a new biopic for you.
Yeah, you've done Bob Dylan. Now you got to go back further in time. Yeah, I like a little more. I like some scruff on a man, and
got like a little more beef.
Yeah, my boyfriend looks like Luke Danes, and
we're talking about Timothée
Chalamet,
and your husband's a history professor,
or not professor. Well, basically professor.
Okay. Well, yes. Professor-like vibes, which I love. Well, at college, it seemed like many of the students were involved with the approach of the American Revolution. So that's approaching. There's a lot of the arguments talking about tax policy, all that fun stuff, including a fellow student by the names of James Madison. But Aaron Burr doesn't really care. He doesn't care at all. None of his correspondents are writing hints at having any thoughts about the ideas that would eventually lead to the Revolutionary War. So he could care less.
Revolution? Who is she?
What war? The book says, quote, his attitude is one of the mysteries that have made him an enigma for more than 200 years. So it's just kind of funny that we'll obviously associate with him with the Revolutionary War, and he does get involved. But at this point, he has zero interest in revolutionary fervor or rhetoric. Any of that doesn't seem like he cares at all.
Yeah. It's interesting just because for somebody who's intelligent and in the law, a lot of these early leaders are coming from the law.
Madison's there at the same time. They become acquainted, friends at this time.
You would expect, even if he didn't necessarily write about it a lot, that he would at least have
acknowledge it.
It's odd.
It pretty much seems the closest that he gets to this point to who we would consider the American revolutionaries was attempting to steal John Hancock's fiancée, Dolly Quincy. They had a little thing before Dolly sent away to her future husband. So they had to send her away before her and Aaron Burr got too close. Wink, wink. Eventually, with the American Revolution, Burr does decide that he wants to get involved. In fact, he thought he deserved an officer commission. No, he has not been in the army. No, he has not done anything that would warrant him. But he does get a letter of introduction from his one-time romantic rival, John Hancock, to meet George Washington. Ever heard of him?
George Washington.
And he gets to meet with him in July of 1775. That meeting does not go well. Washington really doesn't have anything for this young man who, again, never been involved in the military in any way. I don't blame him, although Aaron Burr certainly does. So he would be more than happy to disparage Washington in his writings from this point onward. It's giving incel behavior, not going to lie.
I just see this now. I'm just picturing like a very, again, entitled Timothee Chalamet just being like, yeah, I deserve a title.
Yeah, that he wanted to be in.
My parents were really high up and like all this stuff. And Washington being like, nah.
Yeah, he's not a fan here. And we will see, obviously, they will get reacquainted later on. And unfortunately, resuming the acquaintance, them getting to know each other more does not help in terms of it. But Burr's relentless too, and he just returns time and time again to see if he can get that commission. But no.
Well, and I'm sure it'd be even more insulting to George Washington because he is a seasoned veteran. So it's like having somebody who's fought in previous wars,
done the work,
and, like,
yes,
basically done the work to earn that.
Burr thinks because of his social rank that it's his due that he should become an officer, but obviously not so much.
Hey, Burr, this is why we're splitting from England. We don't have an aristocracy.
He definitely would have fit in with the aristocratic elements in England, so we'll say that.
Luckily for him, we'll have a class with not.
But if Washington wasn't going to do anything, there was somebody who Burr was a big fan of. That would be a man named Benedict Arnold. Boy, can he pick them? Can he? Big fan, at least initially, of Benedict Arnold. Burr at this point is not even 20 years old, and he follows Benedict Arnold on a military expedition into Canada. This is really the first. Yeah, this is the first experience a very pampered Burr has been or has had with being out in the wilderness. They're living off the land. They're sleeping on the freaking ground. I see this move. I see a movie montage showing this like very preppy, urbane kid learning how to hunt for the first time, getting his clothes dirty, eating a squirrel. You know, you would have thought that he would hate the great waking moment of it, but he actually does really well. He excels at it.
It's funny. It sounds like a Revolutionary War version of Troop Beverly Hills or something.
But again, he's never had any experience with this. He's been like living at home and then at college. There is no even like hunting. He hadn't really done. This is all really new, really, really new.
Right. I mean, if you're a city boy at that time, it's not like now where you're like, well, I live in the city, but I go camping on weekends. There's not like that sort of, it's not like that leisure activity.
Some people, there's like hunting and stuff, but yeah, he didn't really have any experience with that. But again, surprising everybody, he's really good at it. The other men actually love him too, because he's more than happy to help out with chores, tasks, and he's really uncomplaining. Doesn't complain about anything. And despite him being kind of a delicate man, he outlasts a lot more hardier men too. People are dropping because of disease and, just the hardship. It's Canada. And it gets, at some point it gets very cold and they're in the wilderness, but he does well. And Arnold and Burr become close. They were in some ways a lot alike, these two. To quote the book, both were courageous to a fault, and both were boundlessly ambitious and caught up in dreams of glory, end quote. And that definitely won't cause any issues down the line. No, sir. Not
no. I'm just going to call him Timmy. Like, Timothee.
I think it's just Timothee
Chalamet. I don't know how you say his name correct, but that's why I'm going to call him Timmy.
To continue the quote, so that it does continue. Quote, self-taught soldiers, they were military geniuses. There were distinct differences, though, marked out by Brigadier General Daniel Morgan. He's a man who knew them both. He said, quote, Arnold would carve out the heart of any man who stood in his way, but Burr would smile at his enemy, speak quietly to him, and after the man lowered his guard, slit his throat. No other quote might sum up Aaron Burr in a nutshell like that. So thank you, General Morgan. So again, this is
Gary.
a man who, yes, would again smile at his enemy, speak quietly to him, and after the man lowered his guard, slit the throat. That's Aaron Burr that I think is similar to what we see in Hamilton. Speak less, talk less, smile more, and like obedient servant. I'll go back and forth, but then it'll be like, you're obedient servant. He's very good at socializing, at getting people to like him. And not everybody does, but there is something dangerous about him as well, which people do. Again, I also talked in that quote above where men either loved him and thought that, they were willing to do anything for him, or they distrusted him. There really wasn't a lot of in between. There weren't a lot of people who were just indifferent to him. It seems like people picked up on that. I don't want to say duplicity, but those kind of two sides of the two sides of from very early on. It seems like people knew that's who he was. This is not something that develops later in his life. It's happening. So anyways, Burr impresses everybody so much that he's chosen for a mission to go to Montreal to link up with General Montgomery, who's there in the city. This mission seems like a fool's errand. It's across hundreds of miles, and he's on his own in the wilderness in Canada. Yes. Oh, it's a great. Who sent it? I know he doesn't like him. No, but they do it because they trust him. He's become so trusted that he gets sent. And Burr makes it his own. In order to not raise any suspicion, he dresses as a priest. So he's going to be acting. He's going to be a priest throughout this. And as unlikely as it sounds, he really does pull it off. So Burr, even at one point, stays at a monastery in the wood, and they're enough to give him, so they believed him enough that they give him a guide to go the rest of the way to Montreal. So talent, baby.
Maybe he should have gone into
I know, that's why I was like, he missed his call.
Give this guy an Oscar.
He was very educated. He knew French. He could speak French, so it didn't seem like he was a foreigner. He does it well and gets to Montreal, baby. He links up with General Montgomery, goes up in the ranks in the military. He becomes a member of Montgomery's staff and involved in military meetings and have a seat at the table, metaphorically and literally.
I was going to say, before he didn't earn it, No, now I'm impressed. I'm like, give that kid a seat.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And he'd be recognized, too, for his immense bravery during this Canada campaign, particularly the heroics of the Battle of Quebec, which is in December of 1775. During this battle, General Montgomery's actually killed himself, and Burr apparently tried to carry the body of this general, his dead general, to try to get it back to a place that they could do something with it, bury it in respect. But unfortunately, the snow, we're in Canada, too difficult to do. Still, this Battle of Quebec makes him into something of a military hero. It's his zenith in terms of his military service. He'd never reach those levels again, but this really does lead him to make his way back to become a part of General Washington's staff as his own secretary. He's like, I'm back, kid. You thought you saw the last of me. What role do you have? You would expect it's a very coveted position in the entire army. Burr earned his spurs somewhat, but Washington and Burr don't have an easy relation. In fact, they never got along, and they never do, even after they stop working with each other. So Washington, perhaps rightfully so, did not want to take advice from, quote, beardless boys. Well, Aaron Burr felt his talents were being wasted on secretarial work. So I could see both sides. I don't want to both sides, but I get I get Washington being like, okay, I get it. You had some experience, but you're still not.
Okay, little Timmy, you played a priest.
We get it.
Well,
we get it.
okay, we get, yeah.
Yes.
Yep. I'm sure George Washington's like, I get that was really cool and you did well, but I've fought in many more battles.
Yeah, at this point, he's
little strippy hippie, little's rascal.
Still not the same. They're at not the same rank. And Aaron Burr, he wanted to be making decisions. Damn it. He had been let into the room to make those decisions in Canada, and now not so much. And he thinks that his heroics that he displayed in Canada would have earned him, again, at least a seat at the table. Not so much. There was some snobbery, too, that made Burr look down upon Washington. Washington was not as learned as Burr was, certainly not as educated. I think he had, like 8th grade education or something. And Burr looks down upon him for that. I love this detail. So, quote, his respect for Washington declined when he discovered that the general's spelling and punctuation were faulty. Yeah, the meows me that part of the quote. Although I'm like, as someone who side eyes sometimes people who misspell words, especially in this day and age. Back then, doesn't matter, but in this day and age, are we a spell check?
Yeah.
I see you.
I get nowadays, or when people spell your name wrong, I'm always like, it's in the signature. It's in the signature.
I'm like, I'm not Eric. I'm a girl. It's not me. Thank you.
Aaron Burr, you can side eye them, but Washington doesn't have a spell check.
Well, they only lasted their 2 weeks when
then
Burr decided to join General Putnam's staff.
Burr didn't listen to our mom's infamous advice. You can do anything for 3 months, for 90 days.
This would be a slight that General Washington, later President Washington, would never forgive. Again, leaving is a downgrade. Burr, he's basically going with another general, but not General Washington. I don't blame him for feeling a little bit put out about it. But General Putnam's staff is much more Burr style, and he's surrounded by a lot of like-minded men. He also falls in love at this time with Margaret Moncrief. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She's the semi-adopted daughter of the Putnam, so aka the boss's family. She's only around 14 years old.
Oh, why are you falling in love with another baby?
So you're probably 19, 20. I know. I read that and I was like, no, don't love that. Baby Margaret, because she's a baby. Her father's actually serving with the British fleet off Manhattan. So when the love affair gets a little bit too serious, the Putnams just basically put her on a boat and send her off to her dad. And like, again, gonna send you off. Get in the boat, little girl. If Burr's too torn up about it, he didn't really show it. What Aaron Burr never did forget, though, was that Washington ignored General Putnam's request for Burr to be given a promotion. Washington, none too pleased with this upstart who left his staff for another's. Right. But Burr isn't just angry with Washington about this. Burr places the blame about this lack of promotion on one of Washington's aides.
EXAND, we are meant to be.
Are meant to be. Yes, Alexander Hamilton.
A colony.
Yes, he's been introduced in the podcast. Mr. Alexander Hamilton, who had succeeded where Burr had failed with Washington. You do wonder if the intelligent Burr, used to getting his way and being top dog, feels flighted with this replacement getting Washington's favor and approval. So the book says that the start of their feud could be dated from about this time, or in the autumn of 1776. It actually goes so far as to say the mutual dislike was chemical. just one of those people that just they're not going to like.
You all know.
You all have people in your life. You all have people in your life where that happens. They didn't do a particular thing. They didn't say anything, but you just don't like them. Hamilton.
Now, if you want to know Hamilton's story, I'll just continue rapping the next 3 minutes to get you caught up. No, I'm just joking.
I think at some point we probably will cover him, so I didn't want to get too far. But Hamilton or not, Washington or not, Burr does get that promotion. He becomes lieutenant colonel, not full colonel. Of course, Burr complains to Washington about it, that there are men who have done less than him who become full colonel, and he's stuck at lieutenant.
Doesn't Burr get at this point? No. Maybe Washington's not going to be like the person you're airing your grievance to, who's going to be like, I get it, kid.
He knows that he's intelligent. He thinks that in the past he's been able to win people over with his wit and his smarts. That's how he got into college at 13, because he outwitted John Witherspoon. So, of course, he thinks that he's going to be able to outwit a man who he thinks is not as smart as he is. Little rascal, but he is a little rascal. In 1779, Burr would meet the woman he was to marry. This is an unusual match for Burr. 10 years older, cougar. So she's 33 to Burr's 23 years.
She has 5 children already. You're taking on a lot.
Theodosia Prevost, she's the widow of a British officer.
Yeah. So she comes up in Hamilton in that line. She's married to a British officer.
Yes, they did meet well. Her husband was still very much alive, although he stationed in the West Indies away from his wife and family.
5 kids, though. That's a lot to take on. At 23, I'm getting like Aaron Taylor Johnson or whatever. They don't have as much of an age gap, but like suddenly you're like, oh, so now I've got 5 children and I'm 23.
Like
little Timmy.
Yeah, some of them were not that much younger than he was.
Yeah, little Timmy.
He, again, met well. Her husband's very much alive, and his increasing presence at the home does not go without notice. The book gives off some Oedipal vibes, more than just vibe, just plain Oedipal, by saying that Theodosia gave the orphan Burr maternal love that he had so lacked. That it was her motherly nature that won Burr's heart. Furthermore, with Oedipal vibes, like, no, it's just Oedipal. But it's not just that. It's not just like the maternal nature. Like him, she could speak French. She loved philosophy, reading. In fact, her home had 2,000 books in it, which, I mean, back then was unheard of. Even now, I'm like, I'm so jealous. Theodosia. I don't have space.
Smart mommy.
She's a very smart mommy. It's a meeting of minds. He finds his equal in Theodosia. Burr's sister, Sarah, would say that she had never seen such a perfectly matched couple. Aaron Burr wanted to marry Theodosia, but especially after he resigns from the army, he obviously doesn't have a lot to provide Theodosia, especially along with 5 kids.
There's a mouse to feed.
Yeah, the oldest is actually serving in the military himself, in the Royal Army.
A scandal.
Post-army, Burr, he tries his hand at being a merchant, but he's no Tommy Cromwell. But he gets bored with it, and Britain's still controlling the seas despite the end of the war. So it made merchanting harder than expected. So he goes back to the law. It would be the law that he would turn to next, with added incentive that Theodosia told Burr that she would marry him after he established himself. So he's like, I got to make money so I can get married to the woman of my dreams and support her boatload of kids.
I got to be a man.
Mm-hmm. And like any intellectual pursuit, Burr threw himself into it. Within that same year, he essentially had completed all requirements for the bar. The drive of this man. If I had an ounce of it, think of what I could do.
Well, he's got some motivation. He wants his smart mommy.
I guess I just need that to. I'd be like, let's divorce and say you won't remarry me until I do X, Y, Z.
Well, give me some motivation.
Well, he was motivated, and he does pass. Although he finds out that Hamilton had an equal grade with the bar after only 6 months of studying versus Burr's 10.
So that puts a damper on things. It's just funny that even now you can see the writing on the wall. They're not even necessarily in the political arena together, but that's still starting to feel like things are going to be only going to be big enough for Hamilton or Burr, not both of them. They're both competing even now. And it's, again, it's petty. Like Burr is, you had said, kind of being his own worst enemy. Like that shouldn't matter. You pass the bar. Like you're a lawyer. And you're right, you did what you had to do, but he still has that inferiority of, well, Hamilton did it with this. In a lot of ways, he can't get past himself, and he is a very selfish person in a lot of ways. We haven't really gotten to that yet. We'll get glimpses of it. I guess we've seen some, but that'll become more clear. He's got his eye, not only doing stuff for himself, but he's also seeing, again, these people who he doesn't like and perhaps thinks that he deserves more than them, like Alexander Hamilton. And when he sees that he got the same grade with only 6 months of studying, he's like, God damn, I gotta be better. I gotta be better than him. Well, Burr sets up shop in Albany, New York, and as promised, Theodosia and Aaron Burr wed on July 2nd, 1782. Burr's brilliance drew in really high-profile clients, plenty of attention. So with his law business thriving, marriage to a woman he loved, this is probably one of the happiest periods in a restless man's life. His marriage, again, happy, very happy. All of Theodosia's children from her previous marriage would end up living with them. The big house is funny. And despite being thrown into the deep end of the pool of fatherhood, Burr rises to the challenge, and he'd remain close to these stepchildren, especially the two boys. They'd be around his orbit for the rest of his life. Yeah. Theodosia is known as this consummate hostess during the war. So she was more than happy to play this supporting role in helping Burr gain more and more attention and more clients. People loved her. So even men like Washington, who didn't like her husband, they loved her. They're like, we love her, we hate you. It's a weird match. Oh, yeah. George is like, how that happened. No, Aaron. Like, let Theodosia and I are gonna hang out. Make sure Burr's arguing for one of his clients, and then he can go and go to the house. Or at a party. An invitation to their home, the Hermitage, which was Theodosia's home before she married Burr. An invitation was a hot ticket. They had good wine. Burr had an enviable wine cellar. He was a man who loved luxury. Again, like I said, he would be perfect in like the higher classes in England. I see him in like as Timmy in like luxury, the luxury ads with sunglasses on a yacht. Definitely Timmy vibes. And they got wonderful food. They had some of the best food that side of the ocean. Obviously, scintillating and great conversation with Aaron and Theodosia because they were both very knowledgeable about everything. They knew how to keep good company. And Burr told a friend that he even had to turn away business from his law practice. That's how busy he was. He was actually so popular that spectators would come to watch him put on a case. So we gave him a little bit of a show. Like, Aaron Burr's in town. Let's go watch. There wasn't anything else to do. Yeah, I guess no TV. This is the earliest law. Oh, yeah, this is Law and Order. This is the Good Wife. Yeah, this is how people first got into law dramas. Yeah, very early. But still, Burr wants more money than his practice could take in. So he invests in land and real estate, especially in the West, although he loses more than a lot of people because he kind of goes in too bold and loses a lot of money, but they're not bankrupt or anything. Again, losing enough money, but they're doing well. He did better at politics, where in 1783 he wins a seat in the legislature in New York.
quote, Burr, who had no convictions that would place him in either group, walked a careful tightrope and refused to identify as either a Whig or a Federalist. So we're talking about the political parties of the day, which I'll kind of go into a little bit later. Home life proved to be as busy as Burr's professional life. So Theodosia gives birth to four children. Yeah, within the first 6 years of marriage to Aaron Burr.
This lady fertile.
Yeah. Unfortunately for the Burrs, though, 3 of those children died in infancy. So there's only one girl named after her lovely mother, Theodosia, who survived. We know that in the musical, Dear Theodosia.
It's such a sweet song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Burr's a really doting father to Theodosia, who, to quote the book, inherited Burr's good looks and quick mind and her mother's sweetness of character and charm. Burr just wants to pour all intellect in this teeny tiny human. And you got to give him credit. He's not one to discount female intellect. He loved the ladies, but he also loved the mind of the ladies, like his wife, Theodosia. He even had a portrait of Mary Wollstonecraft above his mantle at one point. If you don't know, for people who might not have been an English major like me who had to read her stuff, Mary Wollstonecraft, she's not only the mother of Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, she was also a fierce advocate for the rights of women. She's also somebody who I really want to cover because she was very controversial in her time. She did a lot of things that were not ladylike.
Not ladylike.
You. And somehow, improbably, despite work and, being a dad and doing a bunch of other things, Burr found time for hobbies among all this hustle and bustle.
Was it golf?
He continues to be a voracious reader.
No.
He's a reader and he finds time to learn languages. Eventually, he's able to speak 8 languages, including Greek, Italian, Swedish, and even Russian.
We got it, Burr. You're smart.
He's also known to set aside 30 minutes each day for target practice. He would carry 2 pistols with him at all times, and I'm sure that won't come up later.
Nope.
Not at all. I'm just putting it out there. Who knows if that is just a, what do they call it? Chekhov's gun. If there's a gun in a play in the first half, it's going to be used in the second.
Just randomly there. I'm always so good at picking up those things in TV shows. Like, again, when they show like a minuscule detail, I'm like, that's coming back.
You're like, I got it.
I'm like, they're not showing that person or that thing just randomly. And yeah, I'm really good at catching those.
Yes. This is definitely Chekhov's gun because there's a gun that appears in this part and it will be used in the second part. Aaron Burr's biggest political moment so far would happen when he unseats his nemesis Alexander Hamilton's own father-in-law to become a senator in New York. You do see that play out in Hamilton. So again, back.
Yeah, we have little Philip singing about it.
And this sours things even more between the pair. Hamilton would write that, quote, his eyes were opened at last to the true nature of Burr. And when Hamilton starts talking about Burr in terms of his political philosophy, it also does read really true. So when Burr's in the Senate, he doesn't really stand for anything, whereas the men around him couldn't write fast enough about what they wanted this new nation to look like. Burr gives no opinions on the greatest challenges and debates of the day. Even his personal correspondence pales in comparison to men like Jefferson and Hamilton. One of the books that I referenced for it was talking about how, Jefferson and Hamilton have like dozens of volumes if you're reading their own correspondence nowadays. Burr barely has 2. It's like he didn't want anything written down in ink that he couldn't take back later.
Snakey.
Burr himself says that he does not have a political party.
Is he going to be like nowadays would be like Mr. Libertarian? Like, I'm not a Republican.
Kind of. He does choose sides later, but at this point, for an RFK Jr., does he kill a bear in Central Park? I think Burr and all his all his smartness would see right through that man. But anyway, we'll talk about the two-party system, which at this point in America's infancy, the two-party system is also in its infancy. And thank you to my husband, Matthew, who helped me explain the differences of them. Not that I couldn't do it on my own, but we love him, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew.
He sums it up so well.
Thank you, Matthew. And no thanks to the two-party system.
No. If you're angry at it, this is where you can trace it back. We know Washington hated party politics. Speaking of Washington, his party would be the Federalists, although he, again, tries to stay out of the party politics. The Federalists also have Adams and Alexander Hamilton as part of their ranks. These Federalists felt that power should flow from the federal national government to the states. That's obviously a simplified version, but a stronger federal government. Yeah, to facilitate that, they wanted to construct the Constitution loosely, so to include not just power stated in the text. And then we have what we call the Jeffersonian movement, Democratic Republicans. That's not a term they would have used. They would have just called themselves Republicans, but we call them Democratic Republicans to differentiate them from our Republican friends who we talked about in the John Brown
later
episode.
Republicans. Or if we get in Hamilton, Southern but in Democratic Republicans.
So the Democratic Republicans, they'd have Jefferson and also Burr's friend, James Madison. They wanted a true republic, so something like the city-state republics in Greece during the golden age of democracy. So basically the states would share power with the federal government, that kind of thing. These are two parties that are growing in baby America, and Burr's not willing to commit to either. There's a story that defines exactly how far Aaron Burr took his desire to remain neutral. So in the Senate, they would quite literally split the chamber. So the Democratic Republicans, again, think head by Thomas Jefferson, they'd sit on one side, and the Federalists would sit on the other side. So when Aaron Burr enters for the first time, he kind of stands there for a minute, and then he right in the middle, which made even the notorious straight-laced John Adams just start cracking up. That he was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe
this guy,
this fucking guy." Yeah,
it makes me think. I don't want to go too much into a side because if you haven't seen Succession, but it reminds me of when is it Connor? Is he the oldest? Connor, at the funeral, and he doesn't want to say any opinions about their uncle, quote unquote, Lester. He's running for he's like, he was a person, and stating just true facts, no opinions. Yeah. The world's are really bad. Or what is it when you eulogy? Yeah. Aaron Burr would be like, I like your style, because that's kind of what he did. Again, not writing anything, not talking about any opinions. Most people were like, okay, he's not picking a party because he's just there for himself. And no one really knew what to expect because, again, even before he entered the Senate, he didn't really have his views known. People didn't know where he stood on the important issues of the day. Hamilton's friends were not too wrong to call him as slippery as an eel. He just didn't want to do anything that might cost him later when he ran for something grander than the Senate. But his eyes are on a much bigger prize. He would fit in so well with politics today. That's what I'm saying. But he would. Very, but maybe in some ways he wouldn't he wouldn't have a Twitter. He'd have a Twitter handle and he'd have 2 tweets and be like, "Happy New Year," or he'd just retweet. He would retweet everybody, so you had no idea. Yeah, or it would just be super generic things like "Happy New Year," things like that, and not any political stuff. And you're like, "Aren't you a politician?" So he really was he a true then wild card?
Oh, yeah. Some of the examples that they give in the book, they say, quote, Aaron Burr's voting record, attitudes, and approach to various problems were as baffling to Senate watchers as it were to his colleagues. So, one point, he opposes John Jay, who was up for being the minister to Great Britain, the ambassador to Great Britain. They were friends. They had dinner many times, but somehow he opposes it for some reason. So people were like, all right, that's kind of weird. But he also voted in favor of, quote, defying the constitutional provision that members of the Senate be native born, because he was trying to get a Swiss born man to become a member of the Senate. So people are like, we don't quite know where you're going to land. My favorite thing is, here's another, this is going to be kind of a longer quote, but about his quote unquote pattern about what he did. Quote, when a vote was scheduled on a highly controversial subject, Senator Burr absented himself from the chamber at the time the tally was taken, even though he kept his attendance record intact by being present during the opening minutes of the session. And then he'd reappear.
What an asshole. He would totally, he would completely fit in today. He vote present. But even worse, though, is like he would leave. He'd be like, oh, I can imagine him be like, oh, my stomach hurts. Oh, yeah, I gotta go to the bathroom. I'm gonna step out for a minute. I'll be right back. And then,
literally as soon as the vote was over.
Yeah, good.
Oh, Aaron Burr,
you don't even have the spine to just vote present. You actually leave.
But that's what I'm saying. He's so, you think of these men like Jefferson and Madison and Hamilton. They all like are.
They would die for their beliefs.
Yeah, they would die. They would do anything to make people listen to them. And Burr's like, I don't care. This is why people thought that he was out for himself, and I don't think he's really putting anything different out there.
Oh.
So Burr's eyes were on a much bigger prize. It was like, I'm not going to do anything that might fuck that up. Which we totally know. Yeah, that's very modern. It sounds like most politicians now. But in an age of great ambitions, you're at the beginning stages of America. You're in that ground zero, but he's not necessarily thinking that he wants to help build what America's going to be. He's there for the spoils.
And comparing him to John Brown, like they are complete exact opposites. John Brown is willing to die.
Well, that's why I was like, there's so many similarities, but that's a key difference. No, he's not willing to die for anything.
I can't help but think politicians nowadays, you have to worry about Facebook or social media, like, 24/7. This was the golden age to be a white man with opinions as a politician.
That's what I'm saying. He's in at ground zero. You're building the house. You're literally building the house. And you can make it what you want. And that's why these men, they're fighting about what they want America to look like. And he's like, what else? Like, you do what you want to. I'm just going to sit here in the middle of the Senate chamber. I'm not going to vote for anything. I'm not going to say anything. Yeah. That's how he is. And that's what I get when I'm saying that he does feel very modern. And when I say that, not necessarily in a good way, a lot of times. No. That's not necessarily a compliment.
No, it's just like he almost thinks he has everybody's eyes on him and what he's voting in a time when maybe people were more politically attuned than they are today. But there were still a lot of people who were not educated to be that concerned about like what one vote on like a topic.
Yeah, it's very strange. And as a smart person, you would think that you would surely he had actual opinions. He just didn't want to say them. But it is strange. Well, outside of the realm of politics, in the Senate, it's just a little aside. Burr stayed at a boarding house, whose owner had a lovely widowed daughter, Mrs. Dolly Todd. So the two would become fast friends, with Burr becoming something of a tutor for her. She wanted to learn. He was obviously very educated. Eventually, he's going to play matchmaker and introduce her to a man he knew from his college days, John Madison. So yeah, he plays matchmaker for Dolly Madison and John Madison. So without Aaron Burr, we would not have had First Lady Dolly Madison.
I was giving side eye. I was like, oh no, what is going to be some creepy tutor relationship? Okay.
Yeah, in the book it said, like, if he wasn't so deeply in love with his wife, maybe something would have happened. But now he's like, I know just the person for you. Please tell me she wasn't like 12 or something. No, I mean, she had already been married to his widow.
Okay. Like, I don't need another 14-year-old.
No teenager here, but unfortunately.
No, I know it's coming.
Speaking of Theodosia. Yeah, Burr's personal life would change irrevocably. So his beloved wife, Theodosia, died May 18th, 1794. She'd been sick for a while. Burr spent money on the best doctors, all that, and he rode home every weekend to be with her while he's in the Senate. The book mentions how some people put Theodosia's death as the start of Burr's decline, that Theodosia had kept Burr from the worst of his vices, that she had given him some humanity. I don't know. It seems unlikely to take it that far, as she had mostly supported her husband. Like, she was a smart woman, but she wasn't necessarily telling him what to do. So we could probably give a little bit. But I also don't want to underestimate the loss of a partner in life. So he's a widower at 37. He's only 37 at this point.
So she would be she was 47. So they did spend some years, but it's obviously still young. And I can see it just in a way of not all partners, but some partners are good at, like, because Eric doesn't listen to this, I can see I could talk about this, but he says that I'm good at softening some of his hard edges.
Most partners, you hope that you can balance each other out.
So whether or not she was doing anything politically, she probably kept him in check because she was bright. He was in love with her. He couldn't have that same, I don't want to say condescending nature, but like kind of like that winning, I need to win attitude with her. And so, I mean, not having somebody in your life, especially somebody who has clearly made such a big impact on his life, I can imagine it would shift his relationships, especially because she was so well liked.
And made fun of the Oedipal. I mean, it's still weird, the mommy thing, but she did give him this love, unconditional love.
Security.
Yeah, I think you can't underestimate that. You know, could he have gone on and done all the things that he did without her motivation? We said he passed the bar so that he could marry her. And it's really hard to say. I don't think you can blame everything that happens after just on her absence, but I'm sure there is a piece of it that without her, he doesn't have that partner. He does have his daughter, his wife's namesake, Theodosia, who he does pour all of his love into. She becomes every bit as beautiful and accomplished as both of her parents. She'd learn languages, read everything like her father. She's a great dancer. She became his person. He does go on to have this very close relationship with his beloved daughter, who's his only biological child. When Burr's Senate term ends in 1797, he found an even bigger power by becoming essentially the boss of the Tammany Society, sometimes known as Tammany Hall, which is probably what people have heard. Tammany Hall. It's a social organization made up of, quote, clerks and artisans, sailors, dock workers, and common day laborers, which appeals to Burr because if he plays his cards right, he could steer these men towards whoever he wanted, voting wise. Again, he's kind of this wild card. he hasn't really set a party.
Right. It's
yet.
almost like gaining a union endorsement.
Oh yeah, this is 100% like that. And because he's not actually part of Tammany, in terms of membership, he makes sure he's not part of it. But he runs it all but name, and he makes sure the men know exactly who to give thanks to. So every Saturday night, the members were, quote, given a free mug of ale, courtesy of Aaron Burr, to drink to Colonel Burr's health.
Yeah.
That'll do it. That'll do it. If somebody wants to give me free drinks, I'll probably vote whatever way you want it to.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I have values. But it's a huge thing. And men like Hamilton, who had reason to dislike or fear Aaron Burr, find this to be a little or a lot concerning. They're getting very unsettled by this amount of power that he's getting in New York without, I mean, he's not even elected at this point. He's out of office, but he's getting this, what are you working toward? You're like, something's going on that I don't know, but like a movie villain in a horror film, he's going to be popping up at some point.
Which is almost even scarier because he's this wild card where it's like, if people knew, like, it's clear this is what he's aiming for, but because he's so unpredictable, it's like, what's this guy up to?
Yeah, you don't really know what the next steps are. He's out of the Senate. And we know eventually he will try to run for the governorship. There's, presidency. They don't know. Again, he doesn't really stand for anything, but he also has a lot of enemies. We do know that around this time he does get elected to the New York legislature off the backs of his control of the Tammany Society. And this time, Burr does actually put his name to specific legislation. So there'd be no sitting on the sidelines this time. He wrote a bill that would do away with debtor's prison, no doubt appealing to those in the Tammany Society who had gotten him to that spot. Appealing to the working man. Like, I'm with you guys. No debtor's prison. And he's starting to get the support of the Democratic Republicans headed by, recall, TJ, Thomas Jefferson. Also, Jefferson's protege, Burr's friend, James Madison. So this is where he's starting to pick sides. I think it's, him and Jefferson, we will find out, they don't have a great personal relationship. It's an obvious choice because he's not going to be on the side of Alexander Hamilton, who's like, Hamilton's there, I'm going here. Lesser of two evils. Yes, and it's this newfound coziness with Jefferson's party that would lead into the momentous election of 1800, which would have dire consequences for Burr, Jefferson, Hamilton, and the still quite new United States of America. And that's where we'll pick up in the next episode.
I don't even know that.
Well, we will cover the election of 1800 in the next episode. Of course, the infamous duel against Hamilton that Burr will never be able to shake from his reputation, and the rest of Aaron Burr's fascinating life because, again, his life doesn't end after the duel. He's got a living and some weird-ass shit that he gets himself involved in.
Treasonous shit to get involved in.
Do you know about his treason shit?
Is it when he goes out west?
Kind of. Yeah. West stuff.
I know a little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. He gets into some not so great stuff. But I'm excited. I know I'm stopping right at like sort of quote unquote the good part, but I just didn't want to condense it all because we could do a whole episode on the election of 1800, honestly.
And we're going to. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe that will be a mini.
Well, I know. I was about to say, I'm sure Matthew would love to talk about that. And then the duel. I mean, there's just too much to condense in one episode. So you get early Aaron Burr. We can see who he's shaping up to be. We can see where the political winds are flowing.
I think it's fair.
I'm excited to tell the rest of the story.
It's fair. 3 episodes, 2 dueling villains. Well, there are a lot of surprises. I didn't think I would be picturing Timmy as young Aaron Burr.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I'll have to send you a picture.
Yeah.
So I mean, most of the pictures are him when he's older, but there are a few. Like the cover of mine is younger,
or him applying to college at age 11.
Sir. I do love that they were like, no, baby, go back and grow some more, and then we'll see about it.
Drink some Pedialyte, or not Pedialyte, Pediasure. Anyway, thank you, Aaron. I'm super excited to hear what comes next. Seeing if he role plays as a priest again. Who knows? I would love that came back. I'd love if that came back. He realizes his dream to be an actor, and
probably would have been better off for everybody involved if he had gone down that route.
I mean, clearly he had some talent. So, he convinced monks. Maybe that's where his curse happened, pretending to be a priest.
It kind of goes downhill from there.
But again, thank you. And again, we'll be back. Well, Aaron and I will be recording usually on Sunday, but it usually comes out Monday or Tuesday. But maybe we'll get together earlier. So just
no problem with this, but
possibly finish up part 2. Just watch Instagram. Instagram will be your spot to know, because we'll always give a heads up when we're about 1 or 2 days out, when we have a date that we're gonna record. And so part 2 will be finishing Aaron Burr's story, and then, as we said, setting up the duel, not the Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton duel, but who we think is more quote unquote villainous, John Brown or Aaron Burr. That's going to be definitely super interesting, because they're, like you said, very similar in some ways and very, very different in many ways. And then we also said, go to Instagram and let us know whether you think we should do another dueling series next, which would be Princess Diana and Queen Camilla, or you want to hear some kind of one-off villains and then get there. We want to hear your opinion. Go to Instagram. Let us know. Join Patreon. You get 2 months free. As we said, next week, probably actually starting in the weekend, and then into the early next week, we'll be sprinkling some short episodes on our Patreon, which you can access, as we said, for free, but you got to sign up. So take advantage of that discount code. We'll post it again. And anything else I'm missing, Aaron?
No, I think you got everything.
Okay. Well, we hope you have happy holidays, happy few days before we come back. We'll sign off here. Thank you guys, and we will see you soon. Bye.
All right, bye.